Welcome to Inside the Chamber. I'm Nikki Anderson, the President and CEO of the Naperville Area Chamber of Commerce. Today our show will highlight our great community and discuss issues that matter to the growth and success of Naperville. I'd like to introduce my guests for today. City Manager Doug Krieger, welcome.
Thanks.
Councilman Coyne, welcome. Mayor Cherico, welcome.
Thank you.
And Councilwoman Judy Broadhead, welcome.
Thanks.
So let's get started with our questions. The first is, we have a community now of well over 140,000 people. What do you think our challenges are with regards to growth, be it economic or population? What do you all see as a challenge, and a positive challenge, but a challenge nonetheless?
Well, I think one thing that's really interesting is the speed at which we have grown. So, for instance, in, I think, about 1990, we might have had a population of about 85,000, and look where we've come. And I think we added about 50,000 people in 10 or 11 years. So we had an awful lot of very young families for a long time. We were building lots and lots of single-family homes. We were welcoming thousands and thousands of new kids to the school system. We had, for instance, District 204 had one middle school and one high school. One middle school, imagine that.
Wow.
And 203, for instance, shared some facilities. They had a pool at Naperville North. They had a stadium at Central, and they had to share those things back and forth. That's unthinkable now. Same thing when you think of it from the city's perspective. Now we have a lot of people who were in their 30s when they moved here, maybe even their 20s, and now they're in their 50s and 60s. They're doing things we didn't know they were going to do. They're sticking around. They're not necessarily going to become people who move to the south or to someplace warmer. And then we also have a big millennial population, and we wonder, will they be able to afford to live in town? Will they want to live in town? Will there be jobs for them? So those are huge.
Those are good
huge
problems to have, right?
They're great problems to have. But it's a different city than it was 30 years ago.
Yeah, awesome.
I'd add that I think another challenge may be we're approaching build-out. The remaining lots that we have are going to be maybe a little bit tougher to develop than it's been the case previously. There may be a reason they haven't been chosen thus far. So I think as we go forward, we may have to be a little bit more creative as how we approach new development opportunities, given that we don't have as much land as we once did. And as we go forward, we're going to have to be a little bit creative as to how we do that.
Do we see the opportunities since we've almost reached build out, that we're having, if a vacancy happens, that's a greater opportunity for a new business to come in? Or do you see that these businesses are staying and also we're reaching a max with build out?
We're seeing a little bit of both. Okay. Obviously, since the cornfields are going away and we have less and less greenfield development, the focus has really shifted on kind of the redevelopment, or what's also referred to as infill. Okay. Some of the challenges associated with that, if you start with a cornfield, a company or even a subdivision builder, the vision in their head, they can just lay it out in the cornfield. Whereas with a redevelopment opportunity, they've got a vision in their head, and if they're looking at an existing building, they need to be a little bit creative to modify their original vision into what already exists.
Interesting.
From my perspective, as we went through that rapid growth, what we did was we grew, I think, lopsided, more residentially than business district. And so now we have to get that rebalance, because you can't really maintain a healthy tax base if we're relying entirely on residential property tax. And so we need to get that balance, get the rebalance with the business development to help sort of support that residential explosion that we had really for 15 years.
Right.
So that'll be a challenge, but we're pretty good at it.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I never really thought about it that way. So as we talk about build out, let's talk a little bit about Ogden Avenue. What are your thoughts on that?
And before we do, we should probably do a little disclaimer here, because there are three members of the City Council speaking to you today. So because of Open Meetings Act, we are we cannot discuss city business in terms of deliberation. We certainly can answer your questions.
Perfect.
But we should at least acknowledge that we can't be making decisions up here.
Okay, I appreciate that disclaimer. So let's talk about
East Ogden Avenue.
Yeah, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, very challenging area. Once a very, very important business district, the eastern gateway to our city. Certainly an area that at this time I don't think any of us are entirely happy with. And so we have a lot of challenges there, and I think it's going to be a lot of good discussion for what that business district is going to look like and what we all want it to look like going forward.
That's great. I know that for South Naperville, there was a school project where the kids created some ideas for a specific location that we weren't really sure what was going to happen with that. Are we doing the same with East? Is that East Ogden that we're getting a school district involved to come up with ideas?
203 did
Okay.
do a project, and I think it was in many ways modeled on the same sort of method as they used for District 204. We got 203 in the mix as
It
well.
was limited to just the Iroquois
Perfect, okay.
Yeah.
business area.
Yeah, and if I could add my 2 cents on that area. As you see it now, it's a sea of parking surrounded by what's essentially a sort of an extensive strip mall that had Kmart at one time as an anchor, still has H Mart. But you don't see new commercial development and retail development developing in quite that same way. For instance, you might see something that also incorporates residential. That's a possibility. You might see something where really it's clustered or perhaps aimed toward the center with the parking surrounding it or the parking in pods around it. So it's an older shopping center now, and I think that's probably why in some ways it has not been as attractive as it could be. But also we've had an interesting development of Asian-related businesses in that area that have, and the Shilin Center is in that area as well. So we have, people have seen opportunity there.
Right.
But I think as we move forward, we're going to see something that physically looks quite different.
And I think it would be a great opportunity for businesses simply because, as you alluded to earlier, it's kind of the east entryway into our city, and what a great opportunity for some business or project to be there and welcome whomever is coming off.
And I think it's important for those businesses to know that making East Ogden better, more appealing and more attractive is a top priority for our city, and I think it will be for some time. We are really all in on making that area better, and I think we will. I think it's a top priority, and I think we're going to make it happen.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I think the way I look at that is that when you're driving down Ogden Avenue and you get to that, say Naper Wheaton Road, we want you to know that you're entering Naperville. I mean, it can be a really neat area.
Oh, yeah.
And it's our first impression for people coming into the city right there.
Agreed.
So.
That's why I would think it would be such a prime opportunity for businesses that really want to be recognized and kind of be in what I would consider to be a prime spot.
Yeah.
So we'll keep our eyes open and see what you guys do moving forward. We've read a lot about the discussion of cost-sharing services. I know even with Ledge in the Chamber, we talk about how we feel about consolidation and its value. We know Governor Rauner has spoken about it. And of course, we've been reading about it in the paper.
Yeah.
So Mayor, I'd love your take on the cost-sharing services.
I think, it just gets down to, I look at it very similar to how I look at it in my business. If there's something that I can do in my business to make me more competitive, we will do it, right? We want to add value to our product and our services so that customers will use select us as their choice for flooring in our case. And it's very much the same in government. If there are things that we can do to deliver services more efficiently or less expensively, then we have a responsibility to do that. And so working with other governmental bodies to find solutions that will provide better answers is smart government.
Right.
And so I think that it's a very difficult process because it involves people's jobs, people's sort of turf, and that's what makes it complicated. But what we, by working with these different governmental bodies, if we can find these cost-sharing solutions, it's better for the taxpayers.
Right. Well, and I like the analogy that you use about business, because I know even with the business that I'm in now, if I see somebody that's doing a job that really, I don't need that extra work, I see it as impacting not only the staff, but ultimately the organization, because it's less dollars coming into our organization for all the wrong reasons. So from your perspective, Doug, what do you think is the value of cost sharing?
Well, in this specific example, when it first came up, we had no idea. The mayor and council brought it up and said, hey, you know what, take a look at this and see what it would cost. We had no idea whether we'd be cheaper, whether we would be the same, or whether we would be more expensive. After we were able to work through the numbers, the incremental cost to the city was significantly lower than what was currently provided, and said, hey, you know what, this is absolutely worth taking a look. This mayor and council, this isn't the first time they've done something like that. They've challenged us to look both within our borders as well as outside of our borders for opportunities to say, is there a different way we could do things? Could we do it cheaper? Can we increase service levels? We've found some instances where that's the case. Oftentimes it's never easy, and it almost always takes a whole lot longer than anyone would like. But at the end of the day, if it's the right thing to do, you just keep pushing and get it done.
Right.
Yeah.
Ultimately, yeah.
And keep in mind what we're talking about. I think the real estate taxes and our tax bills are a top priority for residents and businesses alike. And what we're talking about should lead to a reduction in those bills. And if we're able to achieve that, even if it takes a little bit of a fight, I think that's something very much worthwhile and something I'm very much willing to aggressively pursue.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's worth fighting for.
Yeah,
I mean,
is.
it is a worthy goal
Yeah.
to try to reduce the levels of government.
Right.
And we're not really, actually, in this particular cost-sharing proposal, we're not eliminating government.
Right.
The bodies all still exist, but we're delivering the services more efficiently, just by simply leveraging the city's resources. I mean, we don't have to hire another city manager or a mayor or any manager, any of the managers or facilities. We don't need to do anything additional to take on the additional 15 miles of road, and so
Comes down to responsible government that ultimately benefits the taxpayers,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. We're going to be right back and to continue this great discussion. Welcome back. We're talking about the state of the city. So the next thing I'd love to talk about is I have people that have visited our community, both friends and family, and say, this is such an amazing community, or people that are new that have moved here and said, there's just something unique about the community. So Mayor, I'll start with you. What do you think it is that makes Naperville such a unique and amazing community?
Well, there's many things, but if I had to put my finger on one thing, it's the spirit of volunteerism. It is such a strong part of our community, and it sort of filters through the entire city in some way. It's, I don't know how to benchmark that. I've never lived outside of Naperville, but I have to believe that this is a very, very special situation, because the number of volunteers who provide this safety net in our community is just astonishing.
Yeah, we're pretty fortunate.
Yeah.
Well, I have lived in a number of communities, and I grew up in a place not unlike Naperville, but within the orbit of New York City, but also a town that had been an agricultural community that transitioned into being an affluent suburb. But it did it in the 50s and 60s. So when I moved here in the 80s, I thought, okay, I get this place, and I see what's happening. that we have people who really want things. They want high levels of services. They want great schools. They want terrific opportunities for their children when it comes right down to what kinds of teams they can join and what kind of activities are available for them after school. So it can be a community that really wants a lot from its public servants and from its institutions. But that's a good thing. And if I could mention the chamber, I have.
Yes, you may.
I may mention the chamber. Well, I have a sister who helps run a women's business institute in Pennsylvania. And when I mentioned the chamber, she said, well, in our area, the nonprofits are really not a very big part of the chamber. They're not a significant voice. So she felt as though her organization didn't necessarily get its voice heard in the same way. And I said, well, in Naperville, and I'm sure all my relatives all over the country are really tired of me starting with that sentence. But they're significant. So the business owners are really important, but the nonprofits have a big voice. And I think it's connected to the spirit of volunteerism that Steve was talking about. Later this spring, in late June, I'm going to be speaking at a conference at George Mason about millennials and Naperville. And I was very happy that they accepted my abstract for that. But one of the things I'm going to be talking about is the idea that Naperville provides the kinds of things it does to a very large number of people. 140-some thousand people are able to benefit from everything that we have to offer. And I think that is, in the Midwest, that's fairly unique, and even around the country, I think that is unusual as well.
I would say that what I think makes Naperville unique is that despite its growth, it's been able to maintain its small town kind of feel. I think not-for-profit communities clearly had a big role in it, the chamber, obviously, but it does have a small town charm to it, despite the fact that it is a big, modern, dynamic city now, and I think that's what makes it special. When I have family come in from out of town, it does, you go everywhere and people, you always run into people all day long, and I think it just feels like a small town, despite its growth.
Well, and even the name, people will say, I didn't expect this.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what they were expecting, but always are amazed at the beauty of our community. Deb, what do you think?
I look back to really what drew me to the town, and that was really great schools, safe streets, so great public safety, and then also a whole lot going on, always something to do, and I think that plays off really the spirit of volunteerism. There's so many service groups that have wonderful things going on, typically more than one each weekend throughout the spring, summer, and fall. And a lot of those folks, if I look at what other communities come to Naperville to try to recreate, it's really our downtown. Everybody comes in here and says, everybody wants to have a downtown like Naperville, and it's not something that there's a cookie cutter mold that you can just plop in and it's going to be successful. I mean, it's a number of factors, but downtown is certainly something very special.
But at the end of the day, if you don't have safe neighborhoods, if you don't have a safe downtown, nothing else is going to matter, right? So our public safety is really a very, very important part of what makes Naperville Naperville.
Right.
I mean, it's a big city, and it's a very, very safe city, and one of the safest in the country for a city our size.
Yeah, I was going to say we have a train station that doesn't cut our downtown in half, but is located.
Someone
close
was
to it.
very smart when they were thinking quite a bit of vision there.
It's very interesting, connected to the whole history of the Plank Road.
Right.
But it worked out beautifully. We have a college really near the downtown. We have a great hospital nearby. We have a river. So we can have a river walk and the beautiful amenities connected to that. We have great access to transportation when it comes to highways, 55
and we have a
and 88.
5-star accredited Chamber of Commerce.
That's right.
That's it.
So, I mean, we have some physical attributes that we were fortunate to begin with, but then an awful lot of it was pretty deliberately planned and nurtured over the years.
Well, and I think too, what excites me from a chamber perspective is not only are we thrilled about our educational system, because that too contributes to a really great
Right.
community, but workforce, obviously. And we look at the college, with the Science Center and where that's going, so a very state-of-the-art facility, bringing more people to our community. But I look at the entrepreneurs that are coming to town, the technology that's coming to town, and I'm very excited about where that's going, and challenging us as a chamber to say, what can we continue to do to support these businesses and maintain our relevancy so that we can be a big contributor to commerce. So between business and education, I think, and all of the things that you guys shared.
That's going to be a very exciting development as we watch the technology companies continue to.
I think we're going to see some really great things.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears a little bit. Last August, I was at a city council meeting, and you all were talking about budget and talking about reserves. And I'd like to know, here we are, not quite a year later, but 9 months later, do you feel that you're on that path to making those goals come to fruition?
Yeah, who would you like to start with that one?
Doug, I'll start with you.
All right. No, the mayor and city council made some very big decisions, and one of the things that I liked about it is they were long-term decisions. Historically, and this is true in most communities, everybody will focus on a one-year period and a one-year budget, and then by the time you're done, you're about ready to go through it again. What this city council did last fall was said, hey, you know what, wait a minute, let's take a step back, let's take a longer-term, more strategic view, and let's put a plan in place that's going to last more than a year. And let's set some tangible goals over an 8-year period and track how we are going to meet those. We are not far into that plan, but I can tell you that all of the financial data we've received to date has been great, and it has been consistent with our expectations. So the goal with respect to building the cash reserves on track, the goal with respect to the electric utility, operating in the black, generating cash on track. The goal with respect to reducing debt is on track. And obviously that's something that we will continue to monitor, but the plans that were put in place last fall are playing out much like we thought they would, and I think that's tremendous for the community.
Fantastic. Well, we're fortunate to have you all in service, so we thank you for that. I'd like to kind of finish the end of this program by asking each of you, what is your biggest challenge and reward in your role? And Mayor, I'm going to start with you, because I know that this is, you've been sitting on City Council and now you're serving as mayor. So I'd love to know what's been your biggest challenge, but also your biggest reward.
I think the biggest challenge is the speed of government. We coming from the private sector, if you want to make a decision, a strategic decision, you just make the decision.
When you said speed, I was going, you mean lack of.
Well, yes, lack of speed. You make a decision in your business, and you turn the ship immediately. You're heading in another direction, and so that's how it works. And in government, it takes time. It works very, very slowly and deliberately, and there's a reason for that. Sure. And there's a lot of stakeholders that need to weigh in on these decisions, and so. But when you feel like you have a very easy decision to make, one that you'd like to just make it and move on to the next challenge, it doesn't work that way. You have to just be patient and let it play out, and that's something that is frustrating at times for a business person. Right. But the reward part of it is that as we accomplish these things and put good either ordinances in place, or we're able to successfully achieve business development or improve neighborhoods, whatever it might be. Getting those accomplishments achieved, having them achieved, is really, it's a great feeling, knowing that you're making Naperville a better place. So it all works.
Great. Yeah. And Councilman Coyne, I know this is your first year.
It is.
So I'd love to hear what your challenge and reward has been.
Well, I think my reward is just being part of a world-class suburban city, a great city like Naperville. We've talked about all the benefits of its small town charm, and being part of that team and being part of that leadership panel. The challenge is balancing all this, the interests. We have some really tough questions that we get to debate, deliberate on at City Council. I think just balancing all of those concerns and the interest groups, I think that is the challenge of making tough decisions, and that we get a lot of them, whether it be financial, development cases. We get a lot of tough calls, but it's very rewarding to go through the process and be part of that team.
That's wonderful.
Yep.
And you've been with the City Council, so
Yeah, I've been on since 2009, and then I did
Our
many,
senior
many.
member.
Yeah,
We don't mean that
senior-
in like an
senior.
older way.
Yes,
Judith.
this is one of the two senior council people. You know what? I'm going to say something a little bit different from what Steve said. So I'm in the education business, and a lot of what I do is teach writing. People often don't necessarily appreciate that while they're going through it. I mean, nobody says, "Hey, English comp, my favorite class." But 10 years later, people will say, "Oh, I had you." I ran into somebody who's the mayor of, I think, of a small town now, who had me and said, "I still have your book. I had you." I thought, "Yay, that's great." And so that's actually kind of a slow process. So to me, some of what we do with government is speedy in comparison. We decide that something can be built or cannot built, the decision's made, and we move on. So I think, and we make so many decisions about a number of different issues that I think you can feel a sense of accomplishment from many of those. And as Kevin was saying, I think one thing that's the biggest challenge is you have many, many constituents. We are a really big town. People may have sort of competing interests. The business community might think one solution is better, and the residents might think another solution is better. And actually, in solving some of the budget issues, those are some of the things we tried to balance. And that can be difficult.
Sure.
But I think all of us have enjoyed working together.
And when I talk about the speed or lack of speed, in private businesses, it's not very often that you would have an opportunity, for an example, to save $800,000 on a cost-sharing initiative.
Right.
But if you had that opportunity in your business, it'd be done immediately.
No, you're preaching the choir. Yeah,
It would be done
totally agree.
immediately. So when you have something that's obvious like that in front of you
Right.
that gives us that kind of opportunity to do better,
Yeah.
and you can't do it quickly. I mean, we've been working on that for months, right?
Yeah.
And that's the frustrating part.
Yep.
So but when we get things done, that's the reward.
So hopefully we'll have you back and ask you, but we are out of time.
No problem.
So just keep doing the great job that you're doing, and thank you all so much for your service. We appreciate it, and I hope you all enjoyed today's show. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us for Inside the Chamber, State of Our City. We hope you found the information valuable. We'll continue to provide quality content in 2016, all designed to help you and your business flourish. Please join us for our next Inside the Chamber as our Chairman of the Board, Adam Russo, interviews Jeff Colvin, author of Humans Are Underrated.